all right, Brad, I've got a 6-year-old daughter, and it's time that I'm starting to think about putting her through college.
Yeah.
I know it's a little early here, but maybe not. Anyway, the other day I was online, and I saw a really, really cool calculator, and I have some amount of money that my parents gave me that I have earmarked, so to speak, for college for my daughter.
Sure.
And I found a calculator that allowed me to type in the name of the college
Yep.
and then looked at the amount of money that I had and would do the math as to how far through my daughter's college education. So certain schools that were just like a regular state school or a technical college, so to speak, it would last for, all 4 years. And then you go to some of the bigger schools and, you barely make it for,
Right.
the first half of the first, year or whatever.
Yeah.
Tell me what's happening in that space right now, because we do know that college is going up and up and up.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of talk us through the pitfalls and what are you seeing with the college savings thing?
Yeah, so on the front end of this, it's a husband and wife sitting down and determining how they want to help.
Okay.
So I'll have affluent families that are not paying for college for their kids because they didn't have.
But I want to pay for college for my kid. I don't want to be a jerk.
Do it, and and that's fine. And I also have people that really probably can't afford to save for their college kids, for their kids to go to college because they need to focus on their own retirement, that would rather focus on college. Like it's that big a thing that they want to help those kids. So once husband and wife get on the record, and you guys are, and say, I want to help our super, super smart daughter get through college, then I think it's to sit down and do some of the math, right, like you did. But what I've learned and what I've seen over the last several years is it's, the government has kind of gotten out of this game. The government used to guarantee loans, and they've gotten out of this somewhat. And so now you got private banks and things like that are doing these student loans. And I remember several years ago sitting down with a couple and their son that was going to go to school, and calling and trying to find the best rates that we could. And we went through some different companies that help you and whatever. Bottom line was the best rate we could find was 7.5%. This is like 2-3 years ago. And
7.5% to borrow money to go to college.
Right. When you could borrow money for 3% for your 30-year loan,
on
but
your house.
7.5 was the best. And by the way, mom and dad co-signed on it. So the risk to the lender was son defaults on his loan, but now we go to mom and dad that are financially secure, still 7.5%. It almost felt like the mob to me, like, we're just going to charge a higher interest rate because we can, so to speak. I would really like to see the government getting back into guaranteeing some of these loans and bringing down the rates. I think everybody should pay for college. I think everybody did before us, and everybody should going forward. But it's really unfair as these interest rates continue to skyrocket. And so people just need to be prepared, like if they're not going to set aside money for college for their kids and they're going to help them when they get there.
What is the cost of this money, and how do you think through that conversation with your kids as to what is the real cost of this money?
Right. So if the loan's going to be 7, 8, 9%, and you can save your own money and maybe you can make 7, 8, 9%, you're better off to do it on the front end and save it.
10 to 20% swing in borrowing the money versus just saving it on your own,
right?
In just percentages.
Yeah. So I think it's such a sticker shock. One is sticker shock when you take a look at the calculator, and you see what those costs are. Here's the other thing that I've seen. I've seen private schools competing with these state schools to bring their costs down. And sometimes the kids don't even ask for it. Sometimes the kids are just going to get a scholarship based upon not their income or anything, just kind of merit. Like, this is a really good kid. We want this kid at this private college, and we're going to lower the tuition costs. So you might look at a college and the rack rate might be $55,000 to go there.
Yep.
But you might really pay $30,000. Because they're needing to compete with the state school that you're going with. So parents should ask these schools to compete with each other. Like, it's almost like, maybe it's like buying a car. Like, they should ask, like, is there any more way you can help us with this cost? Yeah. Because Susie wants to go here, but it's super expensive versus a state school. And have those conversations. It's okay. It's not like you pay the rack rate when you go to that college. But then just understand when you're borrowing money on how darn expensive that is. and hopefully you've got some money set aside if that's your intention to help your kids.
I think it's so interesting when people talk about this idea of like, you've got your name brand schools, right? And then you kind of got your off brand or your underdog schools a little bit, right? And then you have your technical colleges, and how wildly different for teaching a lot of the same type of content.
Sure.
That part is just mind blowing to me. And I do think, like, in the future, I mean, just between me and you, I think that a lot of that, for some of the intro classes, will kind of move to an online type of format. Because I think it has to, especially after COVID now.
Sure.
So that'll be interesting to see how that's reflected in what the cost is in, say, 10 or 15 years when Grace is ready to go to college.
And you know what else is interesting? 30 years ago, I think it was a lot more it was, use grammar, it was difficult to get into those private schools.
Yeah.
There was a waiting list and things like that. Not saying that there isn't now. But these state schools, like these Big Ten schools and things like that, they've created this kind of this narrative of exclusivity and tough to get into and things. And I almost think today's day and age, it's almost harder to get into some of those state schools than it into those private schools. And people would argue whether one's better than the other. It depends on your education and all that other kind of stuff. But make sure that you look at the whole picture when it comes to this planning. It's not just, we're going to put a couple pennies away and we'll help pay for college. When you get there, make sure you understand the game and ask some questions.
And really what the cost of that money is.
Correct.
And the cost to you in the future if you don't save for it now is kind of what you're telling me.
Right.
Totally interesting.
Yeah.
Totally interesting. Yeah, that calculator that we saw the other day, it was so neat because then it also asked you for, each month, are you going to put away $100 a month? Are you going to put away $1,000 or $2, right? So you had these couple of different selectors, and, you could just kind of play out the scenario and see for that particular college for your kid, right? How just changing it a little bit each month with some of these pre-made buttons on there. And you could see, I went from paying for the first year of her to, if I put, another $25 a month in, now I get 2.5 years in, and then the money runs out. So you could play out that scenario really quick.
Yeah. And real quickly, not to make this too long, but imagine this scenario. So now your daughter all of a sudden is 14 years old, understands money a little bit better.
Yeah.
And you sit down at the same calculator, and this calculator says that there's a $25,000 gap. Like, you're short $25,000 for this. And you look at your daughter and say, who's responsible for that?
Yeah.
Like, who's going to come up with that? Is that mom and dad's responsibility, or are you going to have some skin in the game? And if you get good grades, maybe we're going to take care of it. There's just that whole psychology part of it as you teach them about money and about responsibility for their actions and those type of things too.
Where to go.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's a cool discussion on the college thing. If you guys would like some help about that, throw it down in the comments, or better yet, even ask your question. Maybe we'll make a podcast about it next time. So we'll see you sooner.
You bet.
Rather than later.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Bye.